The book of Sirach is not to be found in our regular Bibles, that is, Protestant and Jewish Bibles. It is found in the Orthodox and Catholic Bibles. Many of you are well aware that the church tradition has divided at this point. There are a number of books which we call Old Testament books, which were written in Hebrew and therefore found their way into the Protestant Bible, but there were a number of books written in Greek that were originally part of the Jewish scriptures but were dropped off by the Jews themselves on that simple question. They were written in Greek, not in Hebrew. And at the time of the Protestant Reformation, the Protestants went back to, under Martin Luther, the original scriptures of the Jews and dropped off the books called the apocryphal books, books written in Greek. In spite of the fact that they were not considered by the Protestants or the Jews to be canonical, they still have a tremendous amount of impact because they tell the story pretty much from the close of the Hebrew portion of the Bible to the opening of what we call the New Testament. There are a number of books. Some of them are obviously strange stories of myths and dragons. Part of it is history. But one of the more powerful and one well worth reading is the apocryphal book of Sirach, The Wisdom of Jesus ben Sirach, remembering that Jesus was a very popular name at the time. It is short, pithy statements that deal with human life and weave together the wisdom of the ages into the actual facts of the time. I thought you might enjoy a bit of that as we begin our series on foundations. Many are the supporters for a rich man when he speaks. Though what he says is odious, it wins approval. When a poor man speaks, they make sport of him. He speaks wisely, and no attention is paid him. A rich man speaks, and all are silent. His wisdom they extol to the clouds. A poor man speaks, and they say, "Who's that?" If he slips, they cast him down. Wealth is good when there is no sin, but poverty is evil by the standards of the proud. The heart of a man changes his countenance, either for good or for evil. The sign of a good heart is a cheerful countenance. Withdrawn and perplexed is the laborious schemer. Happy the man whose mouth brings him no grief, who is not stung by remorse for sin. Happy the man whose conscience does not reproach him, who has not lost hope. One of my folk heroes is Popeye the Sailor Man. I can remember as a kid watching the cartoons. I always identified with Popeye for some rather strange reason. Maybe I liked the way he walked, and as I grew up I became a pipe smoker. Maybe it had something to do with that, but I think he caught something of what I consider my personality. You'll remember that Popeye the Sailor Man was always sort of a nice, easygoing guy until Brutus came along, and even then he tried to worm up to and work with Brutus and would always get caught. And Brutus would start his stomping and throwing and all of the things that he would do to poor Popeye, who would be sailing up in the air. And it was amazing to me how the cartoon drawers could come up with so many ways to maim Popeye by Brutus, until suddenly Popeye would scream, "I've had all I could had, I can't stand no more," and would turn around and the whole thing would change. Remember that? Some of you are smiling. Don't you oftentimes see yourself in that role? I'm through. Push me as far as you want, but when I reach the point, I've had all I have and I can't stand no more, and away you go. Well, I walked in the house about 4 weeks ago, and the television was on, and nobody was there, and the Brutus had gotten to me. I can't stand no more. Not only did the television go off, but it almost hit the junk pile. But there was weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth, and a reminder that the football season was still on. So we worked out a deal. 3 hours per person per week. Not 3 hours that the television's on. If you're in there, it's part of your time. It's been fascinating. I don't think anybody's used up their 3 hours. News is free, not by my decision, but by the decision of the family. But once you get out of the habit of television, it's really ridiculous, and it's not even turned on, even by David. but there are certain special programs. And one of David's favorite is Buck Rogers, which I always used to watch religiously with him for totally different reasons. I'm not interested in the 25th century, but the lovely young ladies in space uniforms used to make it palatable. So David would say to me, Dad, I'm going to watch the 25th century. You can watch the girls, but you want to watch it with me, you see. It was nice. Now that it's part of my 3 hours, I'm not so sure. But it's nice. And the other night he said, Dad, you want to watch this with me? And I said, I'll be up in a few minutes. I was doing some work. And I walked in and he said, what's hallucination? How do you describe hallucination to a 10-year-old boy? Or to anybody? I said, what do you mean? He said, she's hallucinating. How would you describe it? Now, it's a long way to get to the point, but I was working on a sermon about faith. And I asked a question of myself as I was talking to him about hallucination. What's the difference between hallucination and faith? How do we know that what we call faith is not an actual fact hallucination? Interesting, isn't it? Jonestown was a case of hallucination parading in the name of faith. And it's difficult to explain to a 10-year-old who is watching a television screen and seeing things on the screen that other people in hallucination don't see those things because he himself is seeing them. That's part of the gimmick. Red light flashing and all that, and this person goes starry-eyed, and then this thing forms, and that's an hallucination. And I said a hallucination is something that one individual sees that other people don't see. It's an unreal figment of the imagination, but there he is watching the same thing. Fortunately, the doorbell rang, and I got called away. That's the greatest answer to questions like that, but I want to pose them for you because I think it's an essential problem that we have to face. When we are talking about our faith and talking about our understanding of God in our lives, how do we know that what we're talking about has any touch of reality at all? And I think there are 3 items that essentially we have to hold on to in every single aspect of our faith commitment in order to separate the hallucinations from the realities of life. The first one is, and believe it or not, this is only the first point of the sermon, not the final point. The first one is that faith has to be true to ourselves. It is only when we deep down within ourselves are able to face ourselves and to work within ourselves that faith becomes a reality. Faith is never something which is outside of us. It's always within us. Don't let that pass by. That's a subtle difference, and it's easy to do it otherwise. We can place faith in people, which is a means of getting outside of ourselves. We can place faith in God. We can place faith in a parent. We can place faith in a minister. We can place faith in a church. We can place all kinds of burdens upon somebody else by instructing them essentially as to what we want them to do and then being disappointed if they don't do it our way. But the whole point is that that faith is illegitimate. The real faith is deep down inside where we live. We ought to separate guilt and guilt trips from faith itself. In the second place, faith ought to be something which can be shared. That which is unique is our own individual understanding. What is shared is the ability to talk about it in such a way that it is understandable so that others can learn from and confirm our feelings. That's why we have churches. It is not only to stimulate our faith, but to compare our faith, to share our faith, to understand our faith, to work around so that the kinds of experiences that each one of us have in our intellectual, emotional, and faith life are to be seen in common. The vast majority of counseling that I do is letting people know that what they're going through is not that unusual. Now, don't ask me why. I don't know why. If other people have gone through it, it makes it easier. But doesn't it? You feel like you're losing your mind, and somebody sits down and helps you to understand that you're not losing your mind, you're just facing a normal kind of crisis. Somehow it's easier because you see other people getting through it. You say, well, if they did it, I can do it. Now, there's always a little bit of a uniqueness in every situation, but essentially we like to know that what we are experiencing is a normal experience in life. And if we were to stop at this particular point, we would then stop our process with Jonestown. Because there were individuals who were comparing their faith and finding a unity and unanimity of spirit. And they left out an essential ingredient, which is the third part, called tradition. We are all capable of moving ourselves in narrow periods to believe certain kinds of things. Any slice of life has a reality to it, but is unreal in the total. Any moment in history can be stopped, but the people at that moment are reflecting a portion of their being, not the total being. It is only the total sweep that enables people to understand themselves and others. When you look at a marriage, there's a tendency to cut it right here and say, where are we now? That's valid. But the total sweep of positive, good, healthy response needs to be seen in light of whatever that cut happens to be. When you look at a ministry, you're talking about 9 or 10 years of a building relationship. At no time, in any point, do you cut it through and see the total ministry. You see only portions of it. When you're talking about faith development, you're talking about 2,000 years of Christian, intellectual, emotional, spiritual growth. And another 2,000 years of impact of God specifically dealing with the people of Israel. And that 4,000 years of tradition can be heavy in one sense, but comforting in another. We were talking the other day around the dinner table about the Women's Lib organization and the Male Lib and the Gay Lib and all the various liberation organizations, and how so often they want to throw out some of the traditional things instead of recognizing that part of our understanding of life is not what's happening in 1980 or 1979 or 1970, but what has been happening in a long period of time. And that certain roles evolve not because of undue pressure, but because the roles are fulfilling. And that the real liberation comes when you can accept the fulfilling roles and grow away from the ones which are shattering of the personality. The same is true of faith. And the second place, and this is one that we've worked on before, but I think it's worth reworking at this stage of our existence. Seeing is believing is not true. Believing is seeing. One of the tragedies I think that a human life is going through at this point is that we've gotten so honest with things that we're now looking for things that don't even exist. Part of our honesty with each other to let people know how we feel about it and so on is that we're always emphasizing the negative instead of looking at the positive. We're problem solvers instead of possible happiness growers. Time and time and time again, it doesn't matter whether it be in a family or in the industry or in a business or in a church or what have you, people are looking to find out what's wrong instead of looking to find out what's right. Parents do it with their kids. For your own sake, I'm going to tell you something. No. And when you believe something is wrong, you can find something wrong. I don't care in what it is. Those of you who are teachers understand that one of the things that you're doing is not only looking for the wrong, but looking for the positive in the students that you're working with. And I've never graded a paper yet that's worth 100%, although I've given hundreds. Because there are very few things that are that perfect. And you can always find something to knock down if you want to. We have said it takes 50 good strokes for every bad stroke, but we continue to give the bad strokes. We have seen major explosions in all kinds of situations, not because of the compliments which have been paid, but because individuals have been told one thing might need to be improved and go off at the deep end, worried about it. When you look at society today, what are you finding? People who are unhappy with everything. If you listen to some of the presidential debates, they've all got problems that they're going to solve. But nobody seems to be holding on to the really good things that are going on. I think if you believe, and that's part of what faith is all about, that if you believe God is active in your life, you're going to see it. If you believe that there's some way that prayer puts you in touch with the spiritual and the divine, you're going to find it active in your life. If you're sitting back saying, prove it to me, I won't accept it, you'll never find it. That's what the little quote from Augustine is all about. For what is faith unless it is to believe what you do not see? It can be dangerous and hallucinatory, but at the same time, there's a certain faith that begins to break through when you make that kind of commitment. Where you say, I don't know, but not knowing isn't going to make me inactive. I'll take the step and do it. And I believe what I am doing is working in harmony with God. What's right with your life? Oh, I'm not supposed to talk about that. That's bragging. David came home and said, I scored a touchdown today. Can I tell you about that, or is that bragging? I said, sure, you can tell me about it. It's not bragging, it's a fact. You've got to be happy about it. Particularly it's his first touchdown, I think. What's right with your lives? You come home and you made a sale today and somebody complimented you at your job. Are you afraid to let anybody know because that's bragging? You ought to let people know. Why is it you can say the boss yelled at me today and dumped on me, but you can't say, hey, something exciting happened today? Why don't we emphasize the good things in our lives more, the happiness? Why don't we tell people we enjoy it, we appreciate it, we like it? We like the way they step in and did things. Why are we problem solvers? Which has come to mean problem creators. We need a change in our existence. And the 80s is a good time for us to begin to believe and to see God active in our lives and not to spend all of our time worried about the minor problems that aren't holding us back at all, but to deal with the major accomplishments that are pushing us forward. And that is true as a church, that's true as families, that's true as individuals, that's true as business, that's true as a country, that's true as people. If you want to find something wrong, I don't care what the situation is, you can find it. We'll put a sign up. Don't tell me why you couldn't do it. Tell me how you did it. I think in the third place, faith is not getting God to do our will, but faith is doing God's will. I talked last week about the whole concept of the parent. God is Father. We talk about God as Father. We talk about God as Mother. We talk about God as Friend. We talk about a lot of images because all of the images have some truth and validity to them. But one of the real problems is that we as individuals go through a certain process. It does not matter whether the process be individually. It does not matter whether it be a family. It does not matter whether it be a church or a business or what. There is a process of growth, immaturity towards maturity. And at every stage of the way, we have options. We can either become more immature and grow back and try it again, or we can make a step forward and grow up. You recognize exactly what I mean. You start off as a child, a baby, and growing into childhood, and parents are there essentially to tell you what to do, and your whole purpose is to get them to do what you want them to do as you're growing. And you have all kinds of tricks that you develop. Tears are a good one. You get a little older and a little smarter, you play upon the sensitivities and sensibilities of parenthood, and you find more and more in every family that children seem to be the center and focus of what's going on. And they know it, and they sense it, and they play it to the hilt. How many of you have ever sat down with your husband or wife or partner and reached out to hold the hand and suddenly heard thump, thump, thump from out of the depths of nowhere comes the child right between the two of you, smiling. And you want to be alone and just look at each other and say, I love you, and here it comes, and you can't say there's anything wrong because after all, the poor kid's smiling at you, and you want to kill him. And the mood is gone. And they're there. And they've done it, and they know it. Oh, do they know it. And then, as they grow older, they suddenly realize that, hey, I don't do things to please Mommy and Daddy or to manipulate them. I do things because it's right within me, and that's scary. It's scary to suddenly have to reach an age of 18, 19, 20, in that period where no longer are you dependent upon the total existence of parents and the warmth of a family, but are beginning to face doing it yourself. And it's exciting, the idea of going out and moving out and being on your own and doing all the things. And we have all kinds of nice social ways to aid the young people to do it. Sending them away to school is one. It's sort of a partial break. But sometime in the whole process, young people realize that while they have support from their parents as human beings, they are on their own and must make their own decisions. To fly, to stumble, to make mistakes, to achieve, to create, to fail, all of the things that we as parents have done. It's scary for parents too, for you young people sitting here. God, it's scary. You have no idea how scary it is. You think you're scared. You ought to see what your parents are going through. Part of their faith and love is to set you free and let you fly and cry when you crash and help you pick up and care. But you mature. You are no longer dependent on them. You become your own person. Now, groups do the same thing. Churches do the same thing. This church is at a crisis period in its own existence. It's 19 years old. It ought to be in a crisis period. Is it going to fly, or is it going to be a child? Is it going to mature and take responsibility totally, completely, and 100% for where it's going, or is it going to be a child? You'll see a poem in the newsletter coming up written by Jill Crane that asks that very question in a little different way. It catches the flavor in a little different way of what I've been saying today. Is it going to make it or not? Are you going to make it or not as a human being? The thing is that when you begin to understand faith in those terms, one understands that faith is not reaching out to God and telling Him what to do and expecting Him to do it for us. Faith becomes the kind of support that you as parents give to your children. You are there, you are supportive, you are loving, you are caring, you are reaching out, you are hoping, you are helping, you are aiding, but you are not doing it for them. And the mature faith in God is that I will stand on my own 2 feet knowing that God will strengthen me, but I have to do it. And faith ultimately is a believing in the support of God and testing that support through the ages of history. And the support is there. Believe it and see it.